StraightallDay.com.
Dre Baldwin, Work on Your Game University.com. Topic of this video, I want to talk about feminism, but it's really not about the females. It's really not about feminism, but I want to explain why men are responsible for feminism. This is actually a thought that I heard someone, or I saw someone express on social media today on X, which is the only social media app in which I will scroll and look at what other people are doing or talking about. And that's where I saw it. So on that app, I believe it was a woman who made the comment. She alluded to the comment first, and then a man quoted her, and then he added something, and then I responded to what he said, and it got me to thinking on this. And the general concept of what the woman had said on social media was that men had failed to do their job. They failed to do their responsibilities, and then the rise of feminism was based on men coming up short on doing their responsibility or adhering to or upholding their responsibility, and then men got mad when feminism became a thing. And I generally would have to agree with that point. And that's why, even though the topic is feminism, this really is about the men. It's really about holding the men accountable. And the bottom line is that, actually not the bottom line, but the top line. In the Garden of Eden, even if you're not a Christian, I am not a practicing Christian, but I respect the religions and people who have religion, because religion prescribes to someone a set of principles from which they need to be living. Doesn't mean they always follow them, but there are principles that they can hold themselves accountable to. And the challenge that I find in society is that a lot of people have no principles to which they hold themselves accountable, which is one of the reasons why we're in the position that we're in. So in the Garden of Eden, when God lets Adam and Eve know, listen, you can eat freely from every tree here, just don't eat from that one tree right there. And the serpent goes and basically flips God's words around and it deceives Eve. Eve then eats from the tree that she's not supposed to eat from, because the serpent basically, again, flipped the words around and made her think it was okay, or convinced her that it was okay, when God clearly had said, don't do that. And then she eats from the tree. The first thing that God does, as soon as Eve makes the mistake of eating from that tree, first thing God does is not address Eve and the sin that she had committed. He did not address her infraction. First thing God does is says, Adam, where are you? That's the first thing God does. As soon as Eve does what she isn't supposed to do, the first thing God says is, where is the man? Now, what does that mean? That means that God understood that the man was supposed to be in charge, running things and maintaining order in the Garden of Eden. So as soon as order was not being maintained in the Garden of Eden, the first thing God did was address the person who's supposed to be in charge, which is the man. It was the same thing that happens in life, not necessarily with men, but with the person in charge. If the board of directors decides that a corporation is not performing at its best level, what's the first thing they do to clean house? They don't fire a middle manager or the maintenance man. First person who gets fired is the person in charge, the CEO, even if that CEO happens to be a woman. First thing they do is get rid of the person who is in charge of the organization when the organization is coming up short. Therefore, if families and society and the world, which we all can agree are built by men, families are maintained by men. If a family does not have a man around, it is a broken family. If society did not have men, all these things that we have, I'm driving in a car right now, and if you're watching this video, you see all these big buildings and architecture and this beautiful structure, societal structure that we have. I'm talking about the tangible things. All of this was built by men. I live here in Miami, Florida. There's a ton of construction going on here. The city is booming with new construction all the time. Business construction, housing, all of this stuff is built by men. The construction workers are mostly men. There are women who work in there, but mostly it's men. Men are the ones who risked past tense, their lives building the infrastructure that we have today. And again, I mean the tangible physical infrastructure, the highways, the byways, the railroads, the roads themselves, the big buildings. All of this stuff was built by men back when we didn't have nearly as many safety regulations that we have now for construction. Construction is not nearly as dangerous a job today as it was 100 years ago, but men mostly did that job, and to this day it's still mostly men doing that job. And I'm not saying that to put women down. That's the last time I'm going to say this in this video. I'm not saying any of this to put women down. I'm saying this, stating as a fact, as a reality, as a truth, more than a fact, a truth, that men with their bare hands, built the society that we live in today. Therefore, continuing my point, being that men are the builders of families, builders of society, and builders of infrastructure, when families, society, infrastructures, organizations, etc. fail, when they come up short, well, guess what we got to look at? The exact same person who built it, the man. If the man gets the credit, and this is what I want men to understand from this video, if men get the credit for things being built, organized, maintained, put together, and just for the fact that they exist, period. If men get credit for that, guess what you also get, man? You get the blame when those things are coming up short. That's how it works. This is what it means to be the person in charge. You get all the credit when things are working, and you get all the blame when things are coming up short. And when things come up short in organization, the way human nature is such put together, let's say for lack of a better term, constructed, is that there's a vacuum. When there's a vacuum of leadership anywhere in the universe, someone will fill that vacuum of leadership. Any of you has a dog. Dogs are pack animals. They understand that even when it's just two entities, them and a human, someone must lead and someone must follow. And if you have a dog and you don't lead your dog, the dog will lead you. If you ever seen a dog walking with a human and it's like the dog is walking the human more than the human is walking the dog is basically telling the human where we're going to go, and the human is just following the dog's lead. That's because dogs are wired for that. They're wired for this form of pack leadership, and if the human is not taking the lead and telling the dog what to do, then the dog will take the lead and tell the human what to do. That's how it works. And it's the same thing with human beings. If two human beings are walking together next to each other, one person is going to adjust to the pace of the other person. So if one person tends to walk pretty fast, and the other person tends to walk pretty slow, the adjustment will be made. Either the slow person is going to walk faster or the fast person is going to walk slower, but there will be an adjustment made, even if it's happening in a subtle, subconscious type of way. All right, that's the way it goes. That any time that people are working together, there will be an adjustment based on who is leading. And let me get back to my main point here, is that when societies and organizations are failing, we got to look at the person in charge. And since we're giving men credit for building society, we got to give men credit for the failures in society. So when we see men going and playing in a women's sport while cosplaying a woman, I don't care if you had a sex change operation or not. If you were born as a man and you're playing a sport as a woman, even though you were born as a man, or especially if you still have male genitalia, that is a failure of society. Who allowed that to happen? Even though it's happening in a women's sport, and even if the women on the team are kind of co-signing this and letting it happen, or they're quietly allowing it, even though they go against it, they're allowing it, it's the men who really are allowing it. Because if a man stepped up and said, yo, this is not happening, ain't no woman going to push past the man and say this is happening. If there's a man who decides, if I decide I'm a woman tomorrow and I decide to go join the WNBA, even if the WNBA's leadership, who might be women, and the players who are women, all say that it's okay because they've been indoctrinated to believe that that's okay. If there is a man who steps up and says that's not happening, it's probably not going to happen. Would everybody agree with this? Now, why is this true? Because some women may be hearing that and saying, well, why is that true? Just because a man decides that something's not going to happen, that means the woman can't make it happen? Is that what you're saying, Dre? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And why am I saying this? I'm saying it for the following reason. Because a man is, if it comes down to the come down, push comes to shove, and a man and a woman cannot agree on something, and it comes to, we got to figure this out in the most animalistic way possible, which means turning to hand-to-hand violence, a woman cannot do anything against a man. If there were no weapons in the world and there became a gender war between men and women have no chance of winning. Men will just beat women into submission, and there will be no more women, and eventually there'll be no more society because men cannot reproduce. If there was a gender war, women would not win. The point of me sharing that is to say that ultimately what a man wants to do, the man is going to do. And a woman cannot stop a man. A woman cannot physically stop a man from doing what he wants to do in a general sense. Everybody understand my point? Which means, men, if things in society are looking crazy in a way they're not supposed to be looking, and we're looking around like, who the hell allowed this to happen? Ultimately, the finger has to be pointed at a man. Ultimately, a man allowed that situation to get out of control the way that it is out of control. That's ultimately what happens, and there are no ifs, ands, or buts about this. Even if women are running a certain organization and they're the ones who came up with some wacky rules to have things looking wild right now. Ultimately, we know that a man ultimately allowed that. A man ultimately put that woman in charge. And if a man had stepped up and said, yo, we ain't doing this, it wouldn't be happening. True or not? Of course. So what does all this have to do with feminism? The rise of feminism, which is all about generally, and I'm being very broad, I'm painting with a very broad brush here when I say these things. Generally, the concept is a woman can do anything that a man can do, and we don't need men running things in society, and women can run things. We got it from here. We don't need men to tell us what to do and what we can't do, etc., and all that. Generally, I don't believe in this. I believe feminism is generally some bullshit. The concept that a woman could do anything a man could do is bullshit. I already explained that to you. Again, if there was a gender war and men and women went hand-to-hand combat, then it should end up in a draw, because a woman could do anything a man could do. But since a woman cannot do everything a man can do, women would be completely physically annihilated, because women cannot physically defend themselves against a man. So that's one thing right there a woman cannot do that a man can do. And also, women are not made to handle, generally are not made to handle stress and pressure. Men are built to handle stress and pressure. That's why men have broad shoulders, women have broad hips. They're made to handle childbirth and nurturing. Men are made to handle stress and pressure and just taking things onto their shoulders on a metaphorical and a literal sense. That's what each is made for. So no, neither can do the things that the other can do, at least not completely. They can step in some jobs, but they don't completely do all the same jobs. And we all generally understand this, but people try to pretend as if they don't. But we don't bullshit over here in the work on your game world. So the rise in feminism is understood, even though I think it's bullshit, is understood because a bunch of men have failed to do their duty. And when men fail to do their duty of stepping up and leading and taking on pressure and stress the way that they're supposed to, well, what happens? Naturally, that void of leadership is filled by women who say, all right, well, let me step up since the man ain't stepping up, and they do their thing, and they start to believe, because they have so many examples of it happening, well, hey, I'm doing everything that a man was supposed to do. I guess I am equal to a man. I understand why some women think this. They're wrong, but I understand why they think it. All right, somebody can be wrong, and I still understand why they have the thought process that they have, because they have experiences that are validating the things that they're believing. And I get exactly why it's happening. Everybody follow what I'm saying here? So, all this is said to say, feminists, whether you are a male feminist, which generally I call male feminist pussies. So if you're a male feminist or you're a female feminist, I understand why you believe what you believe, whether it's from your personal experience, whether you're a man who has no balls, literally or metaphorically, and you decided that you don't want to take your responsibilities as a man, or you have learned this in school, or you've been watching some garbage on the internet, wherever you have been indoctrinated to believe this. I get why you believe it. It is wrong, but I understand. That's what I'm saying. And the real person who I'm talking to in this video is the man. You need to take full ownership of your responsibilities. Even if you are failing at those responsibilities, you need to take ownership of the fact that you are failing because you are not upholding and living up to the responsibilities that should be on your shoulders, that for whatever reason you are not shouldering that load. You need to take ownership of that. If you're a man and you are not taking on your full responsibilities, that's the reason why a woman is stepping up and believing that she can do everything that you can do, because you ain't doing it. So she's thinking, well, somebody got to do it. Maybe it's me who's going to be doing it. That's your responsibility. You need to let that woman know, or those women, or whoever it is, know, hey, that's my responsibility. You have taken it. I need to take that back. Let me take that responsibility back, because that ain't your job. That's my role. That's my position that you're playing right now. Let me take my position back. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Pardon me. Let me take my responsibility back. That's the man's role. And if you're not sure what your responsibilities are, man, let me, again, as a general rule, let me just tell you, man's responsibility is to take on pressure and stress. A woman's responsibility is to nurture and care for and generate new life. Just as a general rule, those are the roles that men and women play. So if a woman is out there doing things that are not those, she's out of her position. And if a man is not doing those things, taking on the pressure and the stress, whatever that is considered for the woman, then man, you ain't doing enough, and you got the woman doing too much. And this is in a bigger sense. I'm not just talking about like in a household. I'm just talking about generally. Men, if you see something crazy that ain't supposed to be happening and you're not speaking up and saying something about it, you are not doing your job as a man. You are not playing your role as a man. If there's a neighborhood or a community where there's a bunch of wild stuff going on and ain't supposed to be happening and nobody's saying anything, That's the man's responsibility to say something. That's not the woman's role to say something. That's the man's role to say something. Now, the women can get in and follow behind the man, but the man's role is to lead. Again, when Eve violated in the Garden of Eden, God did not say anything to the woman. He said something to the man. Well, he eventually addressed the woman, but the first thing he did was address the man. Adam, where are you? That was God's words out of his mouth. Adam, where are you? The first thing he wanted to know is, where is the person who's supposed to be in charge, and why are you not doing your damn job? Men, I'm talking to you. Why are you not doing your job? The reason feminists exist, and the reason they keep believing that the bullshit that they believe is true, is because men are not doing their job, so they keep having more and more reasons to believe their own nonsense. And you ain't giving them any reasons to stop believing it. So what are you seeing, men, in society these days that you know is some nonsense, and you ain't saying nothing? All right, that's one of the reasons why feminism keeps existing, because you ain't saying nothing. And eventually the women just say, okay, well, I see this nonsense happening. I see that man, and I know he sees this nonsense happening. He ain't saying nothing, so obviously he don't want to do his job, so shit, let me do his job. So he don't want to do it, let me do it. And you got women out here acting like men for this very reason, because a lot of you ain't doing your jobs. So what we need, men, is for all of y'all, us, to step up and start doing what we're supposed to be doing. Because as long as we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, all right, the nonsense shall continue, and the nonsense shall, what's the word that I'm looking for here? It shall just keep building upon itself, and that's exactly what's happening out here. So I need all of y'all to step your games up, step your roles up, and make sure you're fulfilling your responsibilities, because otherwise women are going to keep doing what they feel like they have to do because ain't nobody else doing it. All that said, folks, work on your game university.com. That's the place where I do all of my coaching. If you want to work with me directly, that's the place that it happens. That link is down below in the description. Again, it's work on your game university.com. Work on your game. Dre, all